Hey beautiful bride, welcome to this episode of Wedding Wednesday. I'm Jillian Rosich Kendrick, founder of My Best Wedding and myweddingplanningcourse.com, and every Wednesday right here on Facebook Live, I host Wedding Wednesday. This is your opportunity to chat with me, ask questions, bounce ideas off of other people, and really just kind of a safe place for brides to ask questions and get some really good feedback. And tonight's topic, tonight's topic is actually inspired by one of my brides who wrote in and asked if I could talk about defining your wedding budget. And if you have any ideas on topics or things that you need help with, or that you want to talk about on Wedding Wednesday, please feel free to type it into the chat, or you can always private message me and ask for me to talk on a specific topic. So we'll see how that goes. So I hope you're having an awesome evening, and that you're really enjoying the wedding planning process. So let's dive in now into talking about how to define your wedding budget. So a couple of things is going to factor into your wedding budget. And the biggest one that you're going to find is where your wedding is actually taking place. So to figure this out, the best thing to do is really to just go to Google and ask average wedding cost, and then fill in the blank for your state. So average wedding cost in Florida, average wedding cost in Arkansas, average wedding cost in Texas, average wedding cost in South Carolina, average wedding cost, etc., etc. And then figure out, just by Googling a little bit, you're gonna see how much the average wedding will vary from state to state. And then if you want to get really specific, you can specify, like for Florida, I could specify Orlando, Miami, Boca Raton, West Palm, Sarasota, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, and I can specify all of these different cities just to see if the wedding budget changes at all, depending on the city as well. So definitely look into that and see see what your state average is overall, and then look specifically for major cities close to you to just get a sense of what the wedding budget is. Because it could very well be like, if you look at a state like Illinois or New York that have humongous cities, right? Like New York City and Chicago are two of the biggest cities in the world. If you were to look up the average wedding cost of a wedding in Chicago, in the city proper, it's going to be much bigger than, or much more expensive than a wedding that's, say, in like Peoria or Joliet or somewhere else, or a suburb, or even southern Illinois that is like all farm country. That wedding budget is going to be significantly different than a wedding that is in the city proper, just like New York. If you were to look up, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but I'm sure if you were to look up average wedding price in Manhattan or in New York City, would be much different than cities like Buffalo or Albuquerque or anywhere like this. So definitely, actually I think Albuquerque is New Mexico, not New York. Anyway, so definitely do your research and figure out what the average wedding budget is. You don't necessarily have to stick to that. You can always go lower, you can go higher, but doing a little bit of research and figuring out how much the average person is paying in your local area to host a wedding will give you a really good idea of what it's going to cost, because vendors in that area aren't necessarily going to drastically change their prices. Even from year to year, they're not going to drastically change their prices. So knowing the average will give you a really good starting spot to know how much you potentially need to budget. Or like, let's say, I'm just throwing out numbers here. I don't know these numbers for certain, but if you were to like look up average wedding cost in Mississippi is, I don't know, $20,000, let's say, and maybe you think that that's, you know, not quite enough money for the extravagant gala that you're planning on having for your wedding, or maybe you think that that's way too much money, but then at least you can look at that number and you can get a sense of, okay, I want to spend more, I want to spend less, or this is too much, or whatever, and you can figure that out on your own. Another thing with location is when you find out, you know, it might be your dream to get married and have your wedding at like a humongous hotel in a large city. Well, obviously that's going to cost you quite a bit more amount of money than having it at like a smaller hotel or a local hotel or doing something like that. And so you can just gauge your wedding budget kind of depending on like what you're looking for and you know, what your needs are, and then really compare that to the average as well. So another thing that you can look at when you're looking at budgeting and weddings is you have to determine, so number one is location, obviously, and do your research and do that Google searching ahead of time. But number two really would be like, who is paying for the wedding? So the question is, are you single-handedly paying for the wedding? Are you and your fiance together, like splitting it down the middle, or you know, are you going to pay for a percentage and they'll pay for a percentage? Do you have any family members, like your fiance's side of the family or your side of the family, or maybe like you know, a rich uncle or something like that? Is anybody else going to contribute financially towards your wedding? And you might already, just kind of sitting down at face value, you might already have a sense of, yeah, my parents would, you know, might want to chip in, or you might not know, or you might already know that they don't want to chip in. So kind of start to look at that and see where the money is going to come from and who's going to be financially responsible for hosting your wedding and for setting all of this up. And then you can kind of figure out how much you need and from whom. So if you think, like, if you're not sure if your parents are going to contribute, have that conversation. And believe me, it's not an easy conversation to have. I've had that conversation with my parents. My sister, who is engaged and getting married in 1 year and 2 days. Can you believe this? 1 year and 2 days from today, I get to be her matron of honor, which I'm really excited about. But like, she's gone through it. All of my girlfriends who are married have gone through it. Some of my guy friends have had to like watch their fiancés go through asking their parents, you know, are you contributing to our wedding? Yes or no? And that conversation is one of these sort of like adult conversations that you don't really want to have. You don't really know how to approach it. You're gonna screw it up because it's the one and only time in your life you're gonna do it. It's not like you can, you know, practice and use this later on in life, right? But it's just a good conversation to have. And it's important, like, even if you don't think that your parents are going to be willing to contribute financially to your wedding, or even if you don't think that they'll have the means to do it, I would still suggest having that conversation with them, because it affords you two different opportunities. One, it gives you the chance to really like step up as an adult and as a woman and kind of become, you know, sort of becoming an adult and going through that transformation phase. And so having this conversation with them, even if they were to say no, will help your parents along with kind of seeing you as an adult and not just their little girl. And you kind of have to start to have those conversations with your parents as you get older, as you become part of your own family unit. You kind of have to have those. It's also really good in the sense that even if you don't think that your parents or his parents or whomever's parents would want to contribute financially or even have the means to contribute financially to your wedding, it's still good to have that conversation, because you kind of never know, right? Like, even if your parents could only contribute like $500 to your wedding, that's $500 less dollars than you have to come up with, right? And it's $500 less dollars that you and your fiance have to come up with. Or it's also like an opportunity for you to ask your parents, if they want to contribute, and for them to make that decision. Like, don't, I mean, unless you, like, you know for certain, or they've already said so, or, you know, you have like an extenuating circumstance with your family relationships, give them the opportunity, if you have a good relationship with your parents, to reach out to them and say, hey, you know, do you want to contribute to our wedding? If you do, that's fantastic. If you don't, that's okay too, and, you know, we'll make it work. And at least then you have an answer, right? Like, you don't want to go through your whole life wondering if your parents would have wanted to contribute, or could have done this, or should have done that, and you don't want to hold that grudge and live in that way. So just give them the opportunity and see where it takes you. So we have location to determine your budget, who is going to be financially responsible for the wedding, and then really, like, once you know what that average is, like, how much are you actually willing to spend, and where is that money going to come from? So you really have to, like, either get a spreadsheet or put everything on paper, because you can't do it all in your head. And I would know from experience, from trying to do it all in my head, that you absolutely have to put it on paper and have to get a spreadsheet going. So what you want to do once you have those conversations with family members or whomever, you would want to write down, like, mom and dad are good for, you know, $2,000. Which makes the rest of the wedding the financial responsibility of my fiance and myself. And so are we splitting it down the middle, 50% and 50%, or are we doing, like, you know, a 60-40, 80-20, 90-10, like, where is that money actually going to come from? Or rather, who is going to be contributing in that way? And then as far as number 4, where the money comes from itself, and figuring out your initial budget. There's so many things that you can look at, and I would just start by opening up, like, either your credit card statement or your bank statement, and just kind of just looking over the last couple of years of you know, sorry, I just got a phone call and had to turn it off. I apologize. But look over your bank statements over the last couple of years and see what your spending trends are, and you know, where all your money is going, because it could just be that in order to get, you know, in order to save like $5 or $6 grand, you just don't eat out for a couple of months. In order to save $5 or $6 grand, you cut out Netflix, you cut out this, you cut out that. Like, when, you know, just a couple of months ago, when I wanted to save some extra money, I got rid of Netflix. I got rid of this, like, automatic bill thing that I had, like, a subscription to, like, a car wash that I would go to every month. And even though that's only $20 a month, that's like $250 a year that I've now saved myself, that I could put towards other things. Even though Netflix might only be $10 a month and only $120 a year, well, that's already, like, that's almost $400 or $500 right there that I've already saved myself for the year. So you can look at where your money is going right now and what you can cut out. And if you look at that and you realize, okay, by the end of next year, like, I'm not going to have enough money. I'm not going to be able to like, take away eating out, take away, like, vacations, take away, you know, this and that, and still save enough money to have the wedding of my dreams. Well, then you might want to consider giving yourself 2 years, or being engaged for 1.5 years, or, you know, extending that engagement time out a little bit longer, so that you have that opportunity to save up some money and then figure out where all of those funds are going to be coming from. I would strongly suggest, very, very strongly, don't take out a loan for your wedding. And I feel like that's kind of that kind of goes without saying to a degree, but like, loans are for buying cars and buying houses and like, being a student. Don't take out a loan to pay for your wedding. And if you do have to take out a loan to pay for your wedding, like, really, really seriously consider if it's worth it, and if you're getting, you know, a good percentage rate or whatever. And also consider that for when you're looking at buying things for your wedding, like putting them on a credit card. How soon can you pay off that credit card? And you might actually be paying more in interest than what some of those items might in fact be worth to you. So you can, you can look at that in terms of budgeting and really just figure out, like, do I actually need this? Like, do I have to have this? That sort of thing. Anyone who has a question, go ahead and feel free to type it in the chat, and I would love to hear from you as well. Let me see. Facebook Live has like changed around a bunch of stuff, so I'm still getting used to the new one. But as far as other budgeting opportunities, you could even see, like, can you take on like another part-time job, or can you, like, I don't know, like do childcare on the side, or like, can you do something else that would bring you in an income that you can set aside for your wedding? But definitely research the location, figure out if that is, if you want to spend more money, if you want to spend less money, and then you need to shop around for what is available in your budget, and look at wedding budget percentages, and you'll see that like 50% of the budget needs to go towards the venue and the food itself. Like, just that one piece is going to take up 50% of your entire budget. So if you only have a $10,000 budget, then you only have $5,000, which is half, to be able to pay for like a venue and food, which means that you might not be able to invite 500 people to your wedding. So Lamira, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, a beautiful name. Lamira asks, is the cost of your honeymoon included in your budget? So this is actually a really, really good question. And the answer is yes and no. It's both. So it's entirely up to you whether or not you want to include it. And if you Google like wedding budget percentages, or like a wedding budget pie chart, or you Google something like that, you'll actually see that some wedding budgets include money for the honeymoon, and some wedding budgets do not. And it's really just entirely up to you what you decide to do and how you decide to budget, and really if you have enough money to do all of those things. So like, if you say, okay, I only have $15,000 and everything has to fit into that 15 grand, the honeymoon, the tuxes, the dress, the wedding, the venue, the food, the flowers, the cake, the decorations, the rings, the shoes, the accessories, like the hair, the makeup, everything has to fit into that $15,000 budget. Well then, I mean, that's up to you how you decide to do that. I would also suggest, if you are kind of on the fence about whether or not you can afford to include a honeymoon into your wedding budget. I've said this before on the Wedding Wednesday show, but I think it's brilliant, and it's worth sharing multiple times, that friends of my husband and I, Stephanie and James, they actually got married in like January, and they had their honeymoon in August. So they like had a beautiful wedding, then they waited and they saved up money for another 8 months to then pay for their honeymoon. So if you're worried at all about wedding budgeting and fitting in the honeymoon or not, you could consider, like I said, putting off the wedding for like a year or more, maybe even 2 years or so, and save up your money to have the wedding of your dreams. Or you can start to split stuff up like that as well, and just kind of see where those funds are coming from. Melissa, hi Melissa, she says, seriously, I have multiple spreadsheets for my wedding and it brings me so much joy. Organization is key. Oh my God, girl, like music to my heart. I love spreadsheets. And something that I actually offer in my membership site, and myweddingplanningcourse.com, if you're part of one of our memberships, is that I actually include like a wedding budgeting spreadsheet, like spreadsheets for tracking like what gifts you got and whether you sent thank you notes and who they came from and what the addresses are and like all of that. And it's so, you're absolutely right. It's so, so important to stay as organized as possible and make sure that you have everything together. And this is, I say this all the time and it's so true, but like wedding planning is not just what you do to have one day of your life. This is like skills that you're learning and preparation for the rest of your life, not just this one day, not just 24 hours. It's like learning how to really do spreadsheets and how to budget and how to live within your means and learning how to find money kind of out of thin air when when you need to start cutting back on things. Like this is life skills that you need to learn how to be an adult, to carry you through adulthood and carry you through the rest of your life. So like I always say this, but wedding planning is not just about one day of your life. This is about building your relationship with your fiance and having that opportunity to really grow as a couple and figure out like how to communicate and how to work together, and for you to develop skills like building spreadsheets, like communicating with your parents, like doing all of these like business transactions for your wedding. This is an opportunity for you to just grow as a woman and as a person and to develop these life skills to carry you forward. So I'm super excited, Melissa, that you like spreadsheets, and they absolutely are the key. So I hope that you all have enjoyed this wonderful episode of Wedding Wednesday. Whether you're watching live or you're watching on a recording, I would love to hear from you. So feel free to comment below. And I always check the comments even afterwards. Or you can always private message me if you have questions or need help with anything. I'm here. And don't forget, if you haven't done it already, go to myweddingplanningcourse.com/quiz. And that quiz will ask you a series of like 30 questions or so. And it will take you through basically where to budget and how much, which pieces of wedding planning are important to you and most important, and where you need to budget and figuring out the thing that's most important to you. Like, is it food? Is it your look? Is it the location? Is it flowers? Is it catering? So I would highly recommend, if you're on the fence about budget whatsoever, go to myweddingplanningcourse.com/quiz and take the My Best Wedding quiz to figure out what category in wedding planning is most important to you. And then you'll know you can allocate more budget or less budget towards that particular thing. So I hope you enjoy. Have a lovely, lovely Wednesday, and I will see you all right here next week at 7 p.m. Eastern on Facebook Live for Wedding Wednesday. Bye, guys.